salons, barbershops, and spas in Ohio have been told to close your doors. When will they reopen? No one knows for sure.
The coronavirus pandemic is putting America's 30 million small businesses to the test. From nail salons to grocers to restaurants, they're all facing an existential threat.
Every day I wake up and keep my finger crossed that this will end.
I don't know what our future holds. I don't really want to think about it.
COVID crisis has impacted so many industries this year as the virus forced businesses across the country to close their doors. Mom and pop shops, as you know, were especially hard hit and are struggling to stay afloat amidst the pandemic.
As of September, just over 1 in 5 small businesses in New York City were closed due to COVID-19. Across the country, 25% were shut down.
In some cities, it's even worse. In San Francisco, nearly half of all small businesses closed. In Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, and San Antonio, over a third remain shuttered.
The resurgence of COVID-19 this week has brought deepening anxiety for millions of small businesses. The phased reopenings that had once offered hope are now overshadowed by fears among some customers and renewed shutdowns in many states.
Fantastic. It's my pleasure to welcome Hany Fam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Becky. Do you have a preference where you want to sit?
Wherever you go.
So welcome everyone. It's great to have you here, and those online, hello. Nice to have you with us. So I'm thrilled today to be here with the Chamber, with you all, and dear friend, investor, advisor, and partner in our business, Sandy Watkins. It's really a pleasure to have you here, really a pleasure to have you share some of your insights and experience with folks. So we're going to have some fun with that in a minute. We don't have any canned remarks. We're going to do this the fun way. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about Markaaz, how we came about, why we're here, and very candidly, the Markaaz journey started a number of years ago when we created a platform to connect every supplier and buyer on the planet. We did that because people, suppliers and buyers, told us that this was a very painful task, and they struggled with two fundamental problems. Everyone in this room will know what I mean. Anyone who is working with suppliers or anyone who is working with buyers. The two problems they have is where's my money and where's my stuff? As simple as that. And as simple as those 2 points are, they were utterly unaddressed by the many, many organizations, enterprises across the world. So we said there's got to be a better way to do this. We found a couple of things in that industry. We found that on average it took 33 interactions to close each order was paired, either chasing your stuff or chasing your money or figuring out where things were at. So we created a platform, it's called Track, and we launched that program successfully. At the time, it's bigger now, but 286 million suppliers and buyers in a pre-populated directory, global directory. Everyone said you'd never do it, it's never been done before. And what the hell does a business that has less than 0.1% market share in the space, what the hell business do you have in the space? But the reality was the problem was real. It needed a solution. We figured if anyone was going to do it, we would. So we set about doing that. And this will become relevant. I'm going to go full circle here and come back to Markaaz and why we're here today and the book economic recovery. When we started to think about this, we thought, well, how do we build this incredible platform for pre-populated businesses. It didn't exist. It was hard, it was expensive. And so we spent a little time figuring that out. We found a couple of interesting aha points. One of which was, and I've heard a few of you say this tonight, most orders and invoices start life on an Excel spreadsheet. We said, great, let's go talk to Microsoft, they make Excel. And they got it in 10 seconds and became a partner for us to create this incredible platform that's successfully launched. People told us it would take you a decade to build it. We built it in 8 months, launched it successfully. And, on the back of that, we spent, Fabian and I spent a lot of 2019 thinking about how we could reproduce this model, how we could reproduce what we've learned from track into other segments. And we had the beginnings of our backbone for healthcare. We did the same in the transportation sector, we did the same in construction, we did the same in energy. But the one that got us really excited was small business. And we found that small businesses around the world had, again, we're big fans of number 2, by the way. We get it down to two basic challenges. We like 2. We found they had 2 problems. Number 1, they were drowning in what we call point-to-point solutions. Any of you who are small businesses, if I asked you to open your laptop, and I look across the top of the tabs you have open, you probably have about 25 tabs open. Am I right? About right? Something like that.
That's right.
It costs you a lot of money, and you probably use less than 10% of the feature function of most of those programs. That's what they told us. And they said we are none of these programs talk to each other, and bouncing from one to the next is just chewing up a tremendous amount of time. So that was one problem. The second problem that they have is that they spend about 17 days a year proving that they are who they say they are. It sounds like a simple problem. You'd say anyone can fix that. But the truth of the matter is any small business here who's tried to open a bank account, who's tried to get a loan, whether it's from the SBA or a bank or anyone else, and knows the pain you went through to go through that process, it's really painful. Now, to verify that point of how painful it is for you all, we asked banks, we said, how long does it take you to verify somebody and what do you do? And they said it takes us 7 to 10 days on a best case basis. It costs us about $800 to verify each customer, and we use about 7 to 8 different sources of data. That's not efficient. I'm going to put a number on it for you to tell you how bad this is. Conservatively, that's about $1.7 trillion a year of problem, of hurt, of wasted time. In recent research, and all this, by the way, started before COVID. COVID's made it much worse. In recent research, we asked businesses how much time they're spending improving themselves, verifying themselves, signing up for services that matter, like insurance, like financial services, like mortgage, etc. And the shocking statistic is it's now about 33% of their time spent just figuring out how to address this problem of verification, getting set up the right way, the right providers of service. So we thought there's got to be a better way to this. So drawing on our previous experience and what we've previously built, we've created Markaaz. And Markaaz, as you saw in the video, has initially a couple of very specific things. First of all, from our previous experience, we've created the world's first and only pre-verified directory of small business. And by the way, it's not just small business, it's every business. And our objective by the end of this year, by the end of 2021, we'll have every business on the planet in this pre-verified and pre-populated directory. You might say, so what? Let me explain why that's important. First of all, there is no verified directory of business. So am I doing business with a legitimate supplier? You can't really find that out today. You can read reviews all day long, but largely what you're going to get is paid advertising. That's really important. Never been done before. We've done that at considerable expense. The second thing is the call to action here is come claim your record, not come sign up. So you basically come find your business, you claim it, you update it, and in that process behind the scenes, we're completing all those verifications that you need and that you use over and over again in your business. So that you do it once and then henceforth and forevermore, anytime you need to go through that, you just instruct us and we'll push tokens on your behalf to whoever needs those verifications to do it again. It's going to save you that work. And you keep those credentials very secure in a vault. We have 2 vaults here. Public vault, so all the publicly available information about you, guess what? We've collected all that. It's not all accurate because you appear in lots of places and there's a lag in information, misinformation. You get a chance to update and correct and verify that. Then there's a private vault, all the stuff that's not public about you, where you can securely store that information and then at your discretion exclusively share it with whoever you need to. So whether it's your bank or whether it's your insurance company or whether it's whoever, you'll do that on your behalf in the most secret way possible. So that's the first part, the verification part. The second part, we use the word monitoring. It's actually following, but the reality is, if I'm doing business with a supplier, you're going to find them on Markaaz. You can find everybody on Markaaz, and you'll be able to, if they haven't come and claimed their record, with the push of a button to be able to say meet me on Markaaz. That functionality is coming very soon. That where you basically find your suppliers to come claim their record. Now you know they're as verified as you are, for starters. The second thing you want to do, and again, this does not exist anywhere in the world today, is you'll be able to ask permission to monitor things or follow things about them. So I'd like to follow your cash flow, or I'd like to follow your usage of utilities, or I'd like to follow whatever it is, and entirely at their discretion and yours. It's bilateral between the two of you. Do not get in the middle of it. They can say yes or no to any of those things. Once you both agree what you want to follow with each other, we'll enact that for you. We'll communicate that to both of you. We are in the business of open, transparent information and a single source of truth between businesses. That's what we're creating. That's good for you. That's good for your counterparties that you're doing business with. Why is that important? Mid-COVID, you saw all the news about businesses that closed. The reality is that 60% of suppliers of COVID went out of business. So if you were relying on a supplier for the product, 60% of those people are out of business. What small businesses told us universally are horror story after horror story of paying money in advance for goods or services. Someone canceling their phone numbers, canceling their email, disappearing, particularly if you're sourcing product from abroad, where you didn't have legal representation, where the legal system doesn't favor you as an offshore buyer, you were exposed dramatically. Markaaz platform, you can get to see an awful lot of data about those businesses, including their propensity to fail, including their likelihood to pay on time, provide goods and services, etc., etc. Many, many more things. In fact, more data about them than anywhere else that exists on the planet. Why is that important? Today, if you're a small business and you're looking for a supplier of anything, the norm is you go on Google and you spend about 2 hours on average finding a new supplier. At the end of it, you've read pretty much most of the paid advertising, but you know nothing about those suppliers other than reviews that have been written about them or length of time in business or whatever. But what's going to happen in the future, you have no idea about that. We address that. And then last but not least, small businesses today pay a lot of money to pay and get paid. It sounds silly to say that, but it's a real problem. It's not. It sounds simple. There's lots of solutions out there, but nobody has actually put together a solution that allows you to support and manage your cash flow as a small business. So what are we doing about that? Well, first of all, we're creating a new breed of account. We're doing this. I'll share some of the partners with you in a minute. We're creating a new breed of account that allows you to bring together all your sources of value. And the reality is, any small business in the room online knows you use AirPods to pay for stuff. You use personal credit cards. You use loyalty points. You use your own cash. You use borrowed money. You use friends' money. You use all sorts of things. And you have no ability today to really bring those things together in a cohesive way as your total available spending power ability to pay. We're going to allow you to do that in a very effortless, first of its kind way. Number one. Number Number two, we're gonna allow buyers to provide a payment guarantee to their suppliers so that you're not asked to pay upfront for goods and services. So we will effectively hold funds for you in escrow. What does that mean? It means you get to keep it on your personal balance sheet or on your business's balance sheet, but your supplier gets a payment guarantee, which today, if you went to your bank and asked for that, it's very expensive. Those of you who know what a payment guarantee costs, it really takes quite a lot of money to do that. So that's the second thing we're going to do. Thirdly, we're going to allow a net settlement position between businesses. So, you know, Peter owes Mary $100, Mary owes Paul $20, Paul owes someone else $1,000. Rather than move all those individual transactions, we'll settle the net between you all. What's that doing? That's reducing your cost of payment and reducing the in and outflow of funds for your business. Our objective with payments is to drive the cost of payments for small businesses to as close to zero as we can get it. And that's unheard of. For those of you who strive for other services to pay, you know that you're typically paying around 3% to get paid on those businesses. We're going to drive those costs to zero. And we're going to make payments universal. And then last but not least, we're going to provide you with a mechanism where you can finance individual transactions. Not your business, but individual transactions. I have a $1,000 bill from this supplier. We've both been acting on Markaaz for a period of time, so there's a good amount of information about both of us. I want to finance this transaction. Who would like to finance this transaction for me? And it could be your neighbor, it could be another small business, it could be a bank, it could be anybody. As long as they're certified and verified and you can confirm that they can underwrite and fund that transaction, they will fund it. And much like Lending Tree does, you'll be able to say, show me the top 5 bids for this transaction. You can pick wherever you want. You won't get in the middle of it. We're not going to make recommendations. You should pick yourself. But you'll be able to see trending patterns. You'll be able to see success rates. You'll be able to see all of that. And then if you're a supplier that wants to get paid early because you're on 90-day payment terms for payment and you want to be paid earlier, you'll be able to do the same thing. You'll be able to factor what's called that transaction, i.e. say, I want to be paid today for a receivable or a payment that I'm due at some point in the future, much the same fashion. So that's Markaaz, that's what we're creating for you, and there's so many other things that you'll be able to do on the platform. You'll see all of this in a very powerful dashboard that will allow you to run your business in the most comprehensive way. You will be able to access your bank accounts in the most secure way within the platform. You'll be able to access your accounting software in a really efficient way from the platform, and that's just for starters. So we are thrilled and blessed to have great marquee partners. There's an announcement coming next week of a household name that is coming on board with MasterCard. Equifax is a major partner of ours. There's some other household names. If you go on our website, you'll see them. And very relevant for today, Sandy, I think I could share that you are an investor in Markaaz with your incredible, successful track record in business. And I'm going to ask you to come up here and join us, and we're going to have a little chit chat here about these very difficult times. So Sandy, thanks for joining us today. It's really an honor and privilege.
Well, my pleasure to be here.
So, Sandy, folks, for those of you who don't know, has a very distinguished career in recent times. He was the founder and chairman of Open Lending, a wonderful institution here. Those of you who know it, and I'll have Sandy share a little bit about how Open Lending came about, some of the challenges along the way, and how they got to where they got to. And then, we're going to talk about what it really takes for businesses to go through adversity, like the time that we're going through right now. And from your experience, what do you think a the business needs most and what they should be thinking the most about in times like this for success. So, Sandy?
Thank you, Hany. I'm a lifetime Texan, grew up in San Saba, started college in Texas in 1966, and I date myself because my tuition was $50 a semester. got a BBA in accounting, went to work for what's now Deloitte. About 90 days in, it's like, this is not going to work. I don't want to audit numbers, I want to make numbers. So I stuck around for 2 years so I could get a CPA certificate. Came back up here, went to graduate business school, got out of business school, moved to New York, worked for Goldman Sachs for a while. Ended up back in Texas as a corporate bond salesman. Left in 1978, went to work for a foreign group on mergers and acquisitions. And I left that in 1983. 1983 was the last time I got a W-2 in my life. So my wife says since then she's been married to a riverboat gambler. Life is like this. Sometimes we got money, sometimes we don't got money, sometimes we got money. But over that span of time, I think I have, look, I was thinking about the other day, I think I've started 14 companies. And done three of those we took public, either by merging into a shell or actually doing a public offering. So Open Lending was founded here in Austin in 2000. And it grew out of kind of the two prior companies that were sort of involved in lending or financial technology that I've been involved in. One was a Title I mortgage company. And what's relevant there is they didn't have any technology, so we hired a father and son software development group. They had to build a whole platform that would handle automated underwriting, export to Fannie Mae, and all that stuff. And what I've always believed is, and I'm not a technologist, is where deals fall apart when you're trying to develop something, it's between the software guys that see it this way, and the business guys that want it that way. So if you find somebody that has experience in the field of the channel that you're in, that is a software developer, that's a big leg up. So I went in with these guys and we formed another company called Arc Systems here in Austin. I think that was 1994, 95. And what they did was they built an electronic point of sale platform that it was the same time that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were forming automated underwriting. So what we built was an automated underwriting system for all the non-conforming mortgages. And it, that one point in time, I think Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs were software as a service before that term was even involved, per application fees. But the relevance of that to Open Lending really is that we had a customer that in San Antonio was a company that was selling an automated consumer loan underwriting system to, I think, 87 credit unions. But they didn't have the technology to do it, so we white labeled our Arc System stuff and put a black box behind all this. And so I got to see, loan flows of these auto loans and unsecured loans from these credit unions for about a year and a half. So this is a completely broken process. There's no uniformity from one to the other about why, how or why they underwrite a loan. They're looking one out of 3 or 4 applications. You've got a consumer at the point of sale, and basically you're telling him it's no, and he's got to start the whole process over. So it's sort of the same thing that I'm not smart enough to build a direct-to-consumer application. So there's always about finding a need, as Hany said, with restriction, and you can improve the process with technology. So that was kind of the essence of Open Lending. But the first business plan envisioned offering a loan origination system to financial institutions for consumer loans, but basically offering it to them for free, with the idea that we would bring a network of alternate lenders that if they turned it down, we could ping that data headlessly and in real time say, you're gonna be turned down here, but you can have this loan and this loan and this loan. And get fee income on a success basis, which flows back, we share with the financial institution. And that's what we built really and rolled out, and then 9/11 happened. So the significance of that is that credit unions at one point, 65% of their assets nationally were auto loans because they were the low-cost provider, and they actually drove almost all the banks out of consumer lending. If you actually do a query today on the FDIC site and say, give me every bank that has $20 million in core loans, it's 245,000. They all quit because they couldn't make money with prime loans. So these credit unions, we're trying to get them to, look at this alternate lending network, said that's fine, the income will be fine, but we've just lost a third of all of our flow to the advent of the zero APR deals where the car manufacturers, and I always thought about doing it, but knew that if you ever started, you never quit, but it basically lifted the top third of all the flow that credit unions otherwise had been getting, because zero is better than 2 or 3 or 4. So they're saying what we'd really like is some way to create more earning assets. So sat down and thought about it. Well, why are these institutions not buying anything? Why do they cut off below 680 credits? They're risk averse. They don't know how to do it, and they've never done it. So what if we found a way to insure these, provide a safety net so that they could make much higher returns, but have basically the same exposure risk-wise that they would if they did prime loans. And we found a managing general agency, an 80-year-old guy in San Francisco that turns out as a token to him, he had an insurance company that's actually writing default insurance. So we built all that stuff out, started, and it was going gangbusters. I mean, we had probably 20 additional customers in the pipeline, and this insurance company says basically, we don't have a capital surplus to support this, so we're going to stop insuring this thing. So it's like, great. Looks like we're really going to be a success, and now we've got to go scramble around. So in the background, we've been having conversations with a $17 million insurance company that catered to credit unions, and they wanted to be in the business, but they didn't have any models. So it culminated in December of 2003, forming a joint venture where the Open Lending owned 50% of this Lenders Protection joint venture, and Mutual Group owned the other. They put in a little money. We had 9 people. They had 6,500 people. So it took about a year and a half to get the cultures to change. They would have meetings and decide when to have meetings. and that's not really how it worked for us. But after a period, I think 2006 to 2008, the EBITDA growth rate annually was about 250% a year. And we were using their sales force, which is a distribution method that we always stuck to. It's sort of the old internet method. Rather than building this huge sales force, let's find distribution partners that have vendor relationships already, and let's use them to develop hot leads for us, and we'll be very happy on the success basis to share revenue. And that's really the way, still today, probably 40% of the new leads that open-ended customers come in to through that channel. But so what the program is basically it's an auto loan default insurance program. We didn't have any data when we started. I went out and pulled 110 auto loan, non-prime auto loan securitizations to build the curves, default rates when they happen, prepayment rates when they happen, and we hoped that it was right. But over time, what we've been able to do, we've got probably $14 billion granular data, lifetime performance data on these loans now, and that the actuaries have refined, to the point that, basically it's 99% accurate in predicting when and who's going to default. So the value proposition, for institutions is, if you're doing prime auto loans, the way competition expresses itself is with interest rate, which makes it very hard to make any money unless you have, all the scale that you have to have. You have to be a big institution. So the value proposition is, if you come down the spectrum and originate, and we don't do loans below 560 with an average probably of 635 credit score. But these folks are payment buyers, not interest rate sensitive. So that you can make 5 or 6 times the amount of money that you put on a prime loan, and you've got this default insurance behind it that covers 80% of the losses. So, your loss exposure is about what it would be if you were doing 70-50 loans. So the other thing about open lending, really, and I'd say one of the things in terms of resilience in all times is your people. And we've always thought it's harder to do the culture of, kind of green philosophy of officers and players. Everybody's empowered as a stakeholder, and we're all pulling in the right direction. So when it hits the fan, you've got loyal people that know if you're going to leave, they're going to follow you, they're going to get out with it. So that joint venture with Community Mutual is a great example. So we had in the agreement after 5 years put call options where they could call away our 50% and we could put it to them. So that vested in December of 2008. But you know what was on the horizon. They had all kinds of problems and a whole lot of other business. And we could never get them to guarantee us what level of business. This was a one-time opportunity. Otherwise, basically, we took all the risks, so we exercised the put. Well, we ended up, they didn't want to pay us, but so they drug this whole thing out, and it was a valuation process where each of you hired an investment bank, and they valued the entity as a going concern, and whatever half of that was the number they owed. That Lenders Protection joint venture company in 2008 made $11.5 million in taxes. We hired Houlihan Lokey, they valued the company at $142 million. They hired Duff & Phelps, and they valued the company at $9 million. So they're the twain shall meet. So, you get to, and what was interesting about this was then it was baseball arbitration where the two investment bankers picked a third and he had to pick one of the two banks. So what's relevant about that is we had a 6-person board for 5 years where they had 3 seats and we had 3 seats. In 5 years, they rotated 25 people to 3 seats. So you would have people show up and say, what did you do? And one guy show up after 15 minutes and say, I don't even think we should be in this business. So what happened was we had to start recording these board meetings. And there was a board meeting December the 6th of 2008. And the reason that Duff & Phelps valued that company at $9 million, there were a lot of things that they did after we exercised this put that Community Mutual told them were agreed to by the board at this December 6th meeting. Well, we've got a transcript of the meeting, so we end up in mediation. It was mediation, not arbitration. And the mediator has this. We said, don't show it to them until we actually get permission. So he went in and talked with them first, after we kind of had a joint introduction. He came back out and he said, well, I just want you to know if they get this company back, they're going to shut it down. Okay. Why don't you do this? You go in and give them a copy of that transcript and say, you boys want to give us a check for $26 million, you're happy with that, we got a deal. Well, it's funny, the in-house counsel had been at this, Thayer's had been at this December the 6th meeting, but he never told the litigator that the meeting was due. So the litigator looks at him and says, don't you think that might have been relevant? So the essence of this whole thing is, we agreed to come up with a settlement, but we're actually buying them out of the settlement, so we're getting 100% of this back. This is in September 2009. Now, they have done pretty much everything they could to destroy this business, just to destroy the value. So I turned to my partner sitting in mediation, I said, fellas, this is either the smartest, dumbest thing we've ever done. We're not going to know the answer for about 3 years. So I hope we're right. So it also meant that in the midst of the Great Recession, we had to go out and ask insurance companies if they wanted to write false insurance on consumer loans. And let me tell you, we got thrown out with a bunch of things. What saved us was we actually found an actuary firm in Phoenix that we did all the models and results and came up with premiums that actually allowed people to make money given the experience you had during the recession. And we actually, with their help, found an insurance company that agreed in 2010 to actually start doing this again. So we got back into business in October of 2010. So we thought it was a restart. It was a rebuild because they had done enough to anger most of the customers. It's out of 300, I think out of 325 financial institutions, there were 28 of them still in business. So, we didn't keep enough money to do that, so we had to go out and raise more money. And up until March of 2016, all the money capital ever went into this deal, we were returning points of there. So we might as well have been public company, but we had 174 people on the capital. So I'm gonna put in $25,000, I'm gonna put in $500,000. But there were a bunch of them. So the average growth rate though for year-over-year earnings for the last 6 years in both cities has been about 65% a year. And the EBITDA margin, revenue to actual pre-tax income is about 70%. So the growth rate, is a sustained growth rate, it's worth a lot. So in 2016, March of 2016, we saw 28% of the company to a private equity firm, and the enterprise value of the company that we all agreed to was $30 million. With the growth over the next 2 years, and they always had a mantra that we're not long-term investors. We can triple our money in years. So after a couple of years, they knew that they, probably make a fair amount of money, so they were hot to actually take the company to market, see what it was worth. Would you sell it all, you sell it part, or whatever. And so we spent, this was in the fall of 2018, and we spent all of 2019 talking to private equity firms, strategic potential investors. And I think the best offer we got was $750 million for 65% of the company, Golden Gate Capital in San Francisco. The investment banking firm hired FD Partners from San Francisco, which is owned by Steve Watkins. Steve, in the summer, probably in August of 2019, said, you guys need to talk to these SPACs. What's a SPAC? And, there are these special purpose acquisition companies that go public, have the cash, and then have to go find a target to merge with, which is how we build business. Well, it was interesting because we had serious discussions and term sheets from 6 of them. And the lowest value of the company that they had was $1,350 million, and the highest was $1.5 million. It's like, So, right, we finally picked one and announced this merger January the 6th of 2020. Everything's great. Now, March, and the agreed value was $1.5 billion. And you know in these SPAC deals, you're gonna get that, whatever that value is. You don't know what the mix of cash and stock is, because the original investors have the opportunity to redeem if they don't like the deal. So, but you know, that's gonna just basically get made up with stocks. The mix is gonna change the value. So everything's rosy. April, business is off 60%. Because, you know, part of COVID was, a lot of states shut down all the auto dealers for 2.5 months. So there are no car sales because the dealers were home. And so it's like, oh, where are we going? So you knew this was going to happen. The buyers, the SPAC came in and said, well, we're going to have to reprice this deal so that it's more attractive to investors. Okay, we knew this was coming. Fine. Let's cut the value down to $1 billion. Okay, but we're going to add, there's 15 million shares, earn-out shares. We hit certain benchmarks, 12, 14, $16 over the next 4 years. We're going to put it up to 7.5 million earn-out shares. Cut the value. So things that by the time we got to June, time for actually close this merger, business had recovered substantially. You know, you still didn't know where things were going to go though. So we closed the deal June the 12th, 2020. And you always start trading at $10 a share because that's what the original price was that the investors came. Well, it's like we have it. Within 60 days, we actually traded up to about $20. So we got all these earn-out shares, so that at the end of the day, we actually got, you know, $1.5 billion worth of value. So through the goodness of God and good luck, that the price of the stock right now is trading around $40. It's up 300%. It's got a $5 million market. So I attribute that to the team that's actually done this. And that's one of my lessons. The other one, you know, is if you have good people and everybody feels like it's their company and they're investing in it, that's the best situation to be in. You're going to have adversity and you're going to have to deal with ups and downs. That's what's happened over the last 2 years. There are all these unintended consequences of things that have happened that you never saw coming. The shortage of cars. What happened is, you know, when the factories were shut down, they canceled all of orders. Taiwan Semiconductor for the semiconductors, the chips that they needed to build these cars. So they filled that gap with another customer. Well, now they come back and say, we want to reopen all the lines. Sure. We'll let you, you know, we'll get to you when we can. And it's probably going to be the middle of next year before that 100%. So if you got no new cars to sell, what happens to the price of used cars? Because they're scarce. Literally, all-time high is about 15%. So, you know, the good part of that for us is that when someone repossesses a car, they're actually making a profit on it. So there's no insurance. So they'll just see that come. But it's I don't know if I could probably have lived my life doing anything else, but the proudest thing I have about this deal is those 174 people, some of the people that trusted us, we needed the money, put up $25,000. Every single one of them, the stock price has made over $1 million. And it's changed probably 60 families generation. And that's the best thing that I've gotten out of this whole thing. That's cool. You can repay people that have trusted you. So.
I think one of the great inspirations for me great story, and you shared some of it with us in the past, is really how a small business, and at a point in time, you said 9 people.
Point in time, 2 people.
2 people, there you go. We've been in that place. Fabian and I sitting around the table last July, literally thinking about how we take this out of where it was and get it to where it was. That a small business can scale very dramatically, and I think one of the questions that folks might be asking is, well, gosh, $1.5 billion business, etc. That's not my league. That's not a small business. I'm nowhere near that. How do I just think about getting through covering the payroll for next month or next week or the week after? And you said a couple of really important things that resonate for me, and that is the loyalty of your people who operated as shareholders and owners of the business rather than employees.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna ask other people to take furlough money or take a suspension, right? You gotta be the first one. You ask them to do 15%, you gotta do 40 or 50%. Because they gotta see that, you're gonna share, more than share this with them. It's just really the only way to do it. You cannot leave people behind. You gotta leave.
Yeah. I think the other thing that you said that was very striking is the number of folks you spoke to. I know for us, so many in the investment community who are using an old-fashioned or outdated playbook. And a lot of small businesses deal with this when they go to their bank and say, I need a loan, or I need this, or I need that. There's a lot of no's out there right now. You get a lot of no. And so that, one of the other things I loved about your story is the resourcefulness and the creativity and thinking outside the box about how to get around that. We all know from, small business point of view, you make a little money go a long way when you've got the right orientation, and you're scrappy when you think about how to make things go further, when people are paying attention to the dollars and cents going out the door. But that tenacity to think differently about how you run your business, about what you're doing with your business, really matters.
And a lot of it's a personal choice. I mean, how important is this business to you? Sometimes you gotta make your family sort of suffer, by putting business first. And don't drive up to a bank looking for a loan in the corner. It doesn't go over.
That's so true.
But it's I think that's one of the joys. It's the hard times. It's one of the joys of building a successful small business. What it takes. It ain't easy. Whatever size. I mean, I have great admiration because it's when it works. I mean, there's even the accomplishment. You're replacing.
Yeah. We certainly know that to be true. When we first met Sandy and we, laid out what it is we're doing and why we're doing it, it was a wonderful conversation, a very natural conversation to talk about where we could draw on each other's life experience and path we walked through, and find a meeting in the minds there. And for us at Markaaz, we're just thrilled to bits to have someone like Sandy with his experience, who doesn't only bring his mind and experience, but brings his heart, brings his family into these conversations. One of the very first things he shared with me, and I'm not sharing secrets here, but Helen, he spoke about you and the conversation you all had about this, and about why this made sense, etc. We love that. It's a big deal. Businesses are founded on families. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There's no such thing as weekdays and weekends. It doesn't work. I'm sure. So can we. I think for a small business, tenacity, resilience, and having access to things in ways you might not have thought possible before really makes a difference. So, forth to the good friend who said you don't only bring your head to work, you bring your heart as well. I think that really, really matters.
I'll tell you one of the funny stories about this COVID. So the head of IT, since everybody's working in weeks, we would bring in lunch at the office 3 or 4 days a week. So these developers are at home and they're saying, well, what about lunch? He says, well, just, it's fine. If you, get a delivery service, which got out of hand about every single day, every single one of them was ordering lunch. The whole family. That's not going to work. So, jokingly, this was Helen Zucker that actually said this. People will ask me, how many people you got working for you? Well, about half of them.
Well, anyway, Sandy, it's a pleasure. I definitely want to open it up and, have people ask questions either from the floor or online. So please, I don't know if we're passing the mic around or how this is going to work in terms of the sound
I
coverage.
think we can project.
Project.
I'd like to start
Okay.
off with a question.
Please.
How did you both connect?
Gosh,
Yeah, we had hired financial institutions group, UBS, working with point to represent them. I had this idea of starting what we call it sidecar permanent capital. So you've got open lending loans, but there's sources of those loans where people aren't buying. We went and created our own capitals. So I hired those guys, we had a bunch of meetings with them. And after this merger is now, stay in touch, and I asked Jeff Spurlock, the financial investment banker, to, he saw deals that were too early to introduce it to him, or vice versa. And that's exactly how this came up. Those guys try to get everything. It's too early for them to do anything, but they're just trying to plant the seed. Do when you're there, they can get it. So I looked at probably 15 or 16 deals. What really struck me about this is one of those huge friction points. This is, it can be a massive thing. Now, that would be different if any had 23 and a half years experience, MasterCard, and AXA, and already built track. Literally, it's not just to have some young guy full of piss and vinegar that really knows nothing about it. It's like we're going to write this right off the list. But and I won't say in Hany's case, it's a great hair.
Scars and souvenirs.
But it's and if you look at actually partners, they're involved. I mean, Equifax, MasterCard, it's like these guys believe this too. They want to see it happen. It's very meaningful down in there. I remember we were first due diligence done, we were trying to get people we had house like we had at that time 17 people. And on this first due diligence call, they had 28 from 7 different disciplines all around the country.
We've been through those.
But I mean, vendor management has become a huge deal. It's a very painful process for everybody. The other one. And hopefully this is one of the answers.
Sounds like it. We'll open up the floor for Q&A.
A question about your revenue model. Is it subscription based or is it project based or how do
It's
you?
subscription based. So we have 2 parts of the company. We have Markaaz for small business, which is a subscription-based model, put simply. And the other side is for enterprise. I mentioned some of the friction points for a big business wanting to do business with small business. Most big business said to us, we just don't do it. It's too complex, it's too messy, and it costs us much to do business with a small business. It does with a big one, so we just rather do business with a big one. Well, we're upending that model and allowing big business to do business with small business in a very efficient way. We call that enterprise-grade solution. Markaaz as a service or us. So that's put simply. There are lots and lots of revenue streams in the future that we can contemplate, but we wanted to keep it real simple. We've done a mountain of research pre-COVID, mid-COVID, looked at, we keep a tracker of, maybe what, 2,200 companies that we follow. We provide services to small business and what they provide and what they charge, etc. We wanted to make this as easy and as painless as possible for business. So,
Follow-up question there. You said about 19 million businesses you have overall now. Is that globally or is that just in the US?
no, it's actually, it's in global, and we'll be at 300 million by the end of the year. With some of the more challenging parts of the world to get reliable and accurate information, but we have 100% coverage of every business in the United States. It's very interesting when you create, and this is our second rodeo, when you create this pre-populated, let alone pre-verified directory of business, to scan every one of those for all the things that matter, like anti-money laundering and OFAC and sanctions and all the regulatory stuff that's needed. Very expensive to do that. We have a terrific partner to do that, even at the rates that we're able to get, which are unheard of. It's still money. And so we've been wanting to build out the balance with that same level of integrity and that same level of verification, so that literally you can find any business on the planet. You can find them, invite them to meet you on Markaaz, which again is a unique proposition, and then the two of you can get into a thing about how you want to do business, how you want to pay each other, thinking about what I said about how we're going to manage payments and reducing the cost of that, et cetera, et cetera. I've spoken to so many people who say, I've got this supplier of widgets from Thailand or whatever, I'm just hoping and praying the goods turn up because I've already paid the money up front. That model is terrible for small business. It's the thing that destroys small businesses so much. And so much like Sandy's model of underwriting those who can't get access, we want to make that access inclusive and level that playing field so that the smallest business here in town can access the smallest supplier or the largest supplier in mainland China or wherever they want to access that player with the confidence and assurance that we can handle the interaction between the two of them, both in terms of quality of delivery, security, all the regulatory stuff, and security payment as well.
So what you're able to do then is a small business is able to like internally give a PO number, basically.
Payment guarantee to that PO. Yeah, exactly. And reciprocally, you can ask for a great rate back because you're not being priced based on risk. You're being priced,
which is a big challenge.
Which is a huge challenge. So I haven't really talked about this, but in our past incarnation, so small businesses today do not have a community through which they can negotiate. The standard MO is most services that are provided to small business. It's large quote taking an enterprise-grade solution, cutting it down, sometimes randomly, and saying, how much can I get a small business to pay? We don't like that model. Our model is, hey, we're negotiating on behalf of 119 million consumers. We're negotiating on behalf of 300 million businesses. So huge leverage, unheard of leverage. I'll give you a silly example. If today you go online, by the way, small businesses are the #1 target for cyber attacks. We use the word cyber, and we know most small businesses put their head in the sand. They think that's a problem for the government, and it's a problem for somebody else. You're the #1 target for cyber attacks, #1. #2, the highest level of fraud happens in small business. 348% since COVID started, increase in fraud. So if you look online and say, okay, I don't know anything about cyber, but I think I need to know something about it, you'll find a few solutions out there. The best one that's out there is about $1,250. Most businesses will shut their computer at that point in time and say, okay, good, I'll think about that in the future. Pray nothing happens to me until you lose $500,000 or $600,000 from your account in ways that you can't even trace.
You probably never reopen either.
And you will never, 60% go out of business in 6 months after a cyber attack. So if you find that solution, it's unaffordable, even though it's a drop in the ocean compared to the cost that you will sustain if one of these things happens to you, and it will happen to you. It's not a question of when exactly. We can get you that same solution for $250, and you can pay for it at $20 a month.
Is that on the insurance side, or is that it?
That's on the
detection side?
It's actually the evaluation side. And it's the same we negotiate on behalf of the group for insurances and other things as well. So you imagine the biggest buying program you've ever contemplated, and we're going to be able to do that. We don't talk about that too much because we're putting that in place, but it'll go far and wide. Small businesses subscribe to Netflix. They subscribe to Spotify because at the end of the day they listen to music. We can get massive discounts on all those things as well. Access to funds. Even the likes of the SBA are going nuts over Markaaz because they're saying one of the biggest problems we have is ensuring money actually goes to the right people. It's a very serious problem. The SBA can't even figure that out. And so Markaaz comes along and says we verify every single bank account, every single business. They're saying unheard of, unimaginable. Every bank in the country is going nuts about what Markaaz is going to be able to do for them, both in terms of verification of business, accelerated onboarding, and I mentioned it earlier, monitoring. What banks have said to us is, first of all, they don't monitor anything today. There is no monitoring by banks. They said if there's a monitoring proposition, we could offer a raft of products that have never existed. Well, one question I'm asking everybody, and this is really interesting, what would you pay for a service like this? I'm going to share with you an anecdote story. So we're in a hairdressing salon in New York. Sandy knows the story, smiling. We're in a hairdressing salon in New York. We're telling the Markaaz story. And we asked the proprietor, it's actually a little co-op, so they're individual businesses, but they operate under one roof, etc. We said, what would you pay for this? And the owner of the business said, you're asking the wrong question. It's not a question of what's it worth, it's a question of what's it worth to go out of business. Because these things that you're doing have never been available to us as a small business. We said to him, what do you think it's worth? I'm not going to tell you the number because it was interesting to us, but I'm curious, what do people think this is worth? What would you pay?
I think it depends on the size of your company, on the size of your able to pay, then what the value is to you. So that it could range anywhere from $100 a month to several thousand a month.
Good answer. Good answer. We're going to beat your numbers. We're going to be much cheaper than that.
We gotta have a conversation.
All right.
All right.
Oh, you should all go online and sign up, company your businesses. It's easy. Go to Markaaz.com. It's a no-brainer. Company your business and update your details. It's the best way to be seen by everybody else on the platform. So,
Well, Hany's point with this hairdresser, she literally went in and signed up while we were still in the store.
she did. She said, hang on a minute. She put the clippers down, went out back, signed up, and came back and signed up.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much to our speakers. We're grateful for your time. Thank you for sharing your journeys of resiliency and success. I know that I learned, and I'm sure everyone else in the audience did as well, Please be sure to take a look at our upcoming events. We at the Chamber like to offer this kind of programming going forward, and we would love for you all to continue joining us as we move forward, and thank you again for your time. We're going to do some pictures over here in front of the backdrop, and please help yourself to food and drink in the back. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.